Hey, and welcome to lesson 12. Right, we're going to dive straight in because there is a lot to remember and a lot to do. There's some really amazing artistic techniques I've found out and been practicing and learning on how to do the fingers better than just sculpting it straight from the hand. So the reason I left them as the little stumps in the hand is because they're just going to be there for like little guidelines. I keep on editing and sculpting the thumb. For some reason, I just can't get the thumb to bend in the way I want it to bend, so I'll probably come back to that in a bit and probably remesh the hand, making it easier to sculpt. Right, just gonna move the thumb a little bit and smooth it down and just leave it like that. I don't quite like where the stumps are actually on the hand. I might have to shorten them down. Right, so we're going to bring in a cube. So we're going to go into object mode, deselect everything, Shift A, and then bring in a cube. We're going to go straight into edit mode and scale it down. Bring it down on the x-axis, bring it along the x-axis, and then what we'll do is we're going to put this cube right where the index finger is going to be. So I'm just going to scale this down even more. S to scale, and then G or X to move, or you can just move it on the using the gizmo. You can just click the little arrow to move it along the axes. So we want to. So I'm going to actually resculpt the hand a little bit, push the little stumps in to the hand just for a little more, just to make it look a little bit better. I will go over the hand and resculpt the whole thing again. Sculpting the hands is much harder than I believe doing other parts of the anatomy of the body, as there's so much curvature, there's different joints, bends, all sorts. So I will probably I'll definitely be going over it and trying to make it look much better than what it is currently. Just go fast forward this and push everything up, since the hand looked like it was a bit too longer than I anticipated. So, and I'll probably just edit the thumb out a little bit more since it looks very long and crooked. But I will be just doing the fingers for now and then coming back to the bottom bit of the hand and the wrist and making that much nicer. So I'm going to place the cube just on the index finger right inside, make it a little bit bigger than the actual sculpted hand at the moment, because we will be using subdivision and making it a little bit smaller. So when you grab the face of the bottom in edit mode, you can grab it, and then if you hold control and right click, you can then click in a sort of line to create a finger. As you can see, I've created little lines between the fingers for the long part, and then the knuckle, then the long part, then the end knuckle, and then the end finger. I'm not sure if this is necessary. I thought this was just looking at my fingers, just thought it might be it might just help the geometry and when sculpting as well. So you sort of made sort of like a bend in the finger, as you can see. And now what we're going to do is go back into edit mode, press A to select all, and then press Shift E. I keep pressing the wrong buttons here. But when you press Shift E, we can then we increase the creases of the edges of the finger. You can increase it or decrease it. I've just made it a little bit more fatter so it's easy to sculpt with, and then I just shrink it down just a tiny little bit. Just trying to get the proportion size right, because what we're going to do is we will duplicate this finger across to the other fingers. So first things first, when we've reselected the finger, which is Alt Q, but first we just need to, I'd like to switch between mouse and pen. As you can see there, edit mode and preferences, the 3-button emulate. I was working on another project before this, so I was just need to remember, if you're using a graphics tablet, make sure you enable that setting. So over on your side there, on the finger, we had the subdivision surface. We had that to viewport and 2. We're just going to apply that subdivision surface and then use the sculpt tool just to push a little bit in on the fingertip, just to make that little bit curvature point, like it is on the end of your finger. and then the nail should be pointing out. This took a little bit of time and practice when editing this. I got the grab tool and just grabbed out where roughly the knuckles would be to make it look like the finger is bending. Again, we just want to roughly place it how a finger would bend and look. Doesn't have to be too lumpy or too bony. We will definitely be changing the mesh and make it that much better after we've done all the fingers together. Just make sure when you have selected your finger all in edit mode, you can then Shift D to duplicate and duplicate it on the rest of the other fingers. And the little stumps in the hand is just basically a little placement so we can see roughly where we can place the fingers. So after we've sculpted it down a little bit, just using the grab tool here, just pulling it out, pushing it in, smoothing it over and smoothing it down. Just getting all the little bits of the finger parts, try and get that straight. Doesn't matter if it's too bent, we can always adjust that and change that later on. It doesn't have to be perfect, so it's far from perfect. It's a bit wonky, but that's okay. We can change that. So when we're ready, oh, just lost my screen. Yep. We will then go into edit mode, object mode first, and then back into edit mode. And then from here, we're going to press Shift D, which is to duplicate. I accidentally had my snipping tool turned on, so I'm just going to turn that off like so, up the top, and just press Ctrl Z to undo. Make sure it's not duplicated, and then press again Shift D, and then move that across. Okay, so I've got the transform turned on, the little gizmo thing. It does help in this scenario when rotating the finger. You can just press R to rotate on your keyboard if you want to do it freely. But I've actually started to use this gizmo more often now, since I've noticed a lot of artists and a lot of sculptors also use this gizmo, and it definitely helps your workflow when sculpting and building things. So I'm just going to rotate the finger. This is the middle finger, so this is the longest finger. So I'm not going to stretch it. I'm just going to put it on the end of the stump of where the middle finger would go. If I need to make it longer, I could make it longer afterwards, but I'm going to place all the fingers in first and then have a look at it over. So we're just carefully just lining it up, putting it in place. Fingers nicely even, spread it out between the hands. Probably might need to spread them out a little bit more. So I'm just carefully just rotating it, making it lift up. I'm going to make the fingers a little bit different, making them bend on the end, so they're not all in a straight line, just to give it that sort of like that 3D sort of look. Just make them all look a little different. It might be easier to maybe have them all straight up and then bend them later on when using the transform, or the sorry, not transform, the when adding a armature, sorry, and then rigging it, and then using the bones in pose mode to move. But for now, we're going to just put them in place like so to make it a little bit easier. I've seen other artists as well do this, and some professional people doing it like this, and that's what I would like to try and do now. I've done this a few times before. It can be a little tricky with the fingers. Don't matter if your hand is too small, too big. That's okay. Just position your fingers roughly where your fingers on your hand would be, when you sort of slightly spread it out. It's not too much of a problem because the hand we can re-edit, and the fingers, of course, we can come back to edit them. So that was the ring finger. So now we'll just move onto the pinky. We're going to slightly scale that down, so in edit mode still, just press S to scale down and make that slightly a little bit thinner, because it is actually thinner than the rest of the fingers. We could always go back and sculpt the other fingers over to make them a little bit smaller if we need to. But as for the little finger, we just scale that hole down, and I'm going to put it like so, right on the end of the hand. Make that as looking like an actual finger, like it's bent. But that's okay, we can always change it if we need to. And we will now go back into sculpt mode and go over a few things in the next lesson. Hope this lesson's been helpful, and I will catch you in the next lesson.